All right. Fantastic.
All right, perfect. Well, we can get right into it then. So, um, welcome, Allison. I'm so excited to talk to you today. I've heard great things about you, and I'm really excited to get into the work of EFT tapping and Matrix Reimprinting because I actually haven't heard of that one before. So I know that you have years of experience in both of those modalities. So can you talk about what those techniques are and how they work to start off?
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. First off, it's always very exciting and an honor for me to share really this amazing tool. So, as you know, a little bit about tapping and matrix reimprinting, I'll go into it a little bit more. But um, first off, I see it as really, it is a tool, um, but it gives us such a great opportunity to explore ourselves, to really go on a journey within ourselves by letting go of stress. Ultimately, EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, reduces cortisol levels. So it reduces that stress response we can have on a day-to-day level, but it can also do a lot more if somebody's had long-standing stress or trauma, because then we can really get into a journey of where did it begin and all the associated limiting beliefs and disease process that can happen. So there is so much to it, but at a basic level, we are reducing stress whilst focused on, say, fear, for example. Say you're feeling anxious before going to an interview and oh my goodness, the nerves are up, your heart's racing, you don't feel clear anymore, clarity's gone out the window, I'm not good enough, blah blah blah. And then we literally start tapping on these endpoints around the body, the meridian endpoints, where you normally put needles, but there's no needles, it's just focused thoughts and feelings whilst tapping. And that's at a very basic level. So I think there was something in one of your questions about, not feeling good enough in work, etc., or feeling like you're not doing enough. That can be a little bit more interesting, because we can go on a journey then and find out, where did that come from? Where's that internal voice? Where is that negative self-talk coming from? So that's when working with a practitioner, we can go on that beautiful journey and go, okay, so that's me at 5 in the classroom when I was told, you need to do better, or you're not doing enough, or you're stupid, or, you know. So it's an amazing tool. I use it in every session. Matrix reimprinting is a beautiful addition to tapping. It's a little bit more creative, and we're talking about the matrix field of energy, really. And people think of the law of attraction. So what you sort of put out, you often know that that can come back sometimes, negative energy, etc. So matrix reimprinting adds on this beautiful other element and different language. So we're talking, when we're working with a specific issue and it relates to a memory, say of that 5-year-old in the classroom, we refer to that 5-year-old as an echo. So like it's an echo frequency of you. So you're here with me now, but there's a part of you, isn't there, that's a 5-year-old part who maybe still needs a bit of help to become happy in the future today as an adult. So what we do with we do tapping, it's the same thing, we do the same application, we have a setup statement saying what the issue is, but then we're communicating with that younger part of you. People used to call it probably inner child work, but what we're doing is we are actually imagining we're tapping on the roots of any kind of dysfunction or limiting belief, and we're really getting into the story where it began.
Yeah.
And so that's where we talk about this little echo of yours, for example, or mine, and we go in and we communicate with them, we tap, reduce all the stress around the incident. And then what we're doing is we're resourcing. Once we've reduced the stress with the tapping, we're also checking out, what did you make that mean when that happened? And the little echo will communicate to you, well, I wasn't good enough, I'm stupid, I can't do it. So we keep tapping and clearing, and then we do what's called a re-imprint. So once we've checked in, the echo's going, no, I'm fine, I feel lighter, I feel like, oh, nobody was really being mean, the teacher was just having a bad day, I'm okay. And then we do a lovely visualization, and that's what we call the imprint. And we use the heart space, so we focus with all our senses on that new feeling. And then I take people through a visualization process around the body. into the cells, and then we send it out from the heart being the strongest magnetic organ of the body, which is constantly sending those messages out into the matrix and back to you.
Wow.
So that's a bit of a distinction between traditional tapping and matrix. It's an extension of EFT, traditional EFT tapping. Yeah.
Right. It's so fascinating because I feel like the not good enough is something that comes up a lot, even in our community and when we work with clients as well. It's just that's always that core belief is the not good enough, and it's interesting that so many of us have that. And I remember a time in my life where I was on a softball team and I was really young and I lost the game for the whole team. Well, I didn't really, but that's what the perception was because I missed the ball and everyone was mad. And I feel like that one experience really stuck with me. And until I started digging into some of this work, I didn't realize that that was so ingrained in me because it was such a traumatic experience. So it's just fascinating that there could be that one thing that can form so much of this.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not resolved, so it's a conflict hasn't got the resolution. So anything that smells or looks or feels similar, you get the trigger again, and then you try to protect yourself by closing off or just telling yourself to just stand back. You may be freezing or you're exhausted. All of this. We can talk a bit more about the fight, flight, freeze response with trauma, but yeah, I love the work because it takes people on this journey of discovery, of realizing that's actually not me. It's just an experience that I haven't processed.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the number of sessions to clear, I mean, I know I'm sure that this is very different depending on the person, but typically, how long does it take to clear something like that out, like a belief of not being good enough and reframing that?
You're right. It very much depends on the individual,
Mhm.
um, and how many routes, if you like, that has traveled into. So somebody might turn up to me and say, I'm feeling very unworthy right now in my current relationship. But actually, when I investigate the roots of that unworthiness and when was kind of maybe the earlier time of feeling unworthiness, they said they had a beautiful childhood. They've had such great life up until this recent relationship. So therefore, it might be more like, okay, something's happened in this current relationship that is now starting to form a belief that you're not worthy. But actually, it's not so deep. So I can work with that person on, say, something traumatic that happened in the relationship, a conflict, and we can resolve that. And then they might go on to realize there's a different perception about it. They go on and have the wonderful relationship, an even better one,
Mhm.
compared to somebody who turns up. I'll give an example of a lady who was actually on one of my workshops, and I was doing a demonstration, and basically she said she had a fear of being in a lift. So I knew actually when she said that it was a bit delicate and it can relate to feeling confined, for example, in a situation that's not pleasant. So I decided not to do the demonstration with her because I had a feeling that this might be something else. And sure enough, it was. So after the course, she came to see me, and what was disclosed was actually what I suspected, which was some abuse that she'd experienced, some sexual abuse. So that was um, 6 sessions I did with her to resolve this belief that I'm shameful, I'm not good enough, all the sadly all the issues that come up with any kind of abuse, physical, emotional. And so that was more complex. You can imagine that self-worth actually went back to childhood and her disruptive environment as a child, which so the roots of it started very young, and then that kept playing out into the space of intimate relationships where she was giving herself away and then got herself in a dangerous situation. So that was more complex, so it took more sessions.
Yeah.
um, it just depends how much. Also, if you think of it, I always think of it, I'm an emotional detective. That's my role in my coaching, to help people feel at peace and more present in their life by resolving stress. So It really is dependent on how much evidence do you have of not feeling good enough. Can you explain where does that show up in your life?
Mhm.
So that might be, well, at school, yes, okay, it had started at school, but then it was, in high school, and then it was with my friendships, and then it was in the workplace. And each session I might spend an hour discovering where that was and doing EFT and Matrix to go in and communicate with that person, that part of them, the echo, to resolve the conflict and the belief that was formed or reinforced. So we can let it go. And then ultimately what happens then, Catherine, is you don't need to do every single instant in your life where you don't feel worthy, because every day we fall into that. Every day a little bit of us goes, oh, I can't do this, oh, I'm going to mess it up or something. But when you do good, thorough work as a practitioner, you can actually maybe just do 4 really thorough sessions, and actually somebody goes, I'm really starting to question it. I think I'm okay, even if I'm not perfect. So it depends on where everybody's at in their healing journey as well, and how open they are and what other things they're doing alongside the tapping.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what environment they're in at home, with what relationships, what diet, what they're eating, what they're thinking.
Mhm.
But generally, I'd say, to answer that, sometimes I can work with somebody just for an hour on a fear of flying. And that can be resolved really quickly because it's not relating to any claustrophobia or anywhere else in their life. It's just one incident they had with air turbulence.
Yeah.
uh,
And then
so yeah, and that's quite simple. So yeah, generally I'd see my clients anywhere between 3 and 10 sessions.
3 and 10 sessions. Got it. I'm sorry. I just realized that my
Oops, I
headphones
think
weren't
we lost
connected,
it.
so that's why I'm.
That'll help with the sound quite a bit.
Okay,
Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think like I have done some work with the subconscious mind. Are they? Does EFT tapping tap into the subconscious mind as well? Is that how it works, or
Yes.
how to? Yeah, got it.
Yes. Yes, it does. And if you think of the subconscious mind as something that's just operating in the background,
Mm-hmm.
until it becomes conscious often when we get triggered by
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tapping, absolutely. I start always my sessions with ensuring my clients feel safe to talk. And sometimes I know that there's something traumatic they'd like to resolve, because to me, most issues relate to something that's unresolved. And like you said in your question, I think earlier, about not people think, oh, I've not had any trauma, but actually being told you've got a big nose in classroom can relate to feeling traumatized.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so yeah,
Mhm.
so it's a real journey. And the opportunities to, sorry, I'll just go back, I lost track there for a minute. If I've got somebody with me and I know that they're feeling uncomfortable, and they know underneath there's all this stuff, and maybe it's subconscious but it's kind of conscious, I'm going to start just gently tapping with them to help them feel calm, because tapping calms the nervous system down. Very simply put, it's reducing cortisol. It lets you feel calm. And what we're doing with that gentle tapping, it's something we call the tearless trauma technique, is it starts to connect to the subconscious. It starts to connect gently, almost a little voice going, okay, I'm here. We're going to start looking at this, but we're going to do it when you feel safe and comfortable. And I
Mm-hmm.
do that for, a few rounds of tapping before I check in with them, and they go, I'm starting to feel ready to share with you now, because before I was really embarrassed to tell you this.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts to connect with the subconscious, which is an event, often an experience. And
Yeah.
then we start to go in more deep, what becomes conscious, because there's more comfortability with it. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because I've done some work with the subconscious mind as well, and it's just fascinating what comes up as I'm tapping into that. One of the things that you mentioned was around triggers, and something that I've been curious about, and then we'll get back into on track with the questions. But something that I have been curious about is with triggers. So they tend to come up in very similar situations, like whether it's the same person, the same environment, the same situation. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are, or if you work with clients on this, when you're experiencing a trigger that keeps coming up over the same situation, and you build awareness around it. So I know that this is because I'm not owning my power, or because I have a limiting belief that I'm not good enough. Do you typically recommend that people stick with that situation until you grow out of it and grow into not being triggered anymore, or saying, okay, I acknowledge that this is a trigger that's coming up, but I'm also going to leave the situation because it's affecting my mental health? That's just something I've been curious about, because it tends to happen with me quite a bit. So curious to get your thoughts.
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
The way I would approach it, again, with the process I use with tapping is, so for example, say one of your triggers might be to do with work, and I don't know if I'm doing enough of a good job. Can I do better? And I would be asking you, can you give me an example of when you got this trigger? What was going on for you? So, were you with other people and you felt that somebody was talking to you or looking at you in a certain way as if to say, that's not enough, you need to give me more? So I would be wanting to have the evidence, and I would say, okay, Katherine, let's just start tapping on how you feel when you remember that trigger. Talk to me about that trigger. How does it make you feel in the now? Do you see where I'm coming from? So can you give me a little example, perhaps, of something that you, either yourself or somebody else, what a trigger is or was?
Yeah, I think for me, it would come up a lot with specific people. So it would be people and I would feel like I don't measure up to this particular person. And that's the trigger.
Yes.
So I think, and then it's every time that I communicate then with that person, that's the mentality that I have. So even though, like, if in a work setting, for example, I have to communicate with them all the time, but that trigger consistently comes up. So it's like, when do you draw the line?
Well, that's right. And again, in a session, I'd be asking, even as you shared that with me, I'd be getting more details, saying, tell me how you feel now when you think about he or she. Explain to me the look on their face. What did they actually say? And it's like a movie. So I get you to start narrating a particular instant where you got triggered. And you say, oh, yes, I can now feel like my heart's racing a bit and I feel really judged. And where do you feel it, Katherine? I feel it in my heart. So then I'd take you through the process, even though I feel really judged by David or Sarah, and I can feel it in my heart. And I'd start with where you're at, the way they looked at me, and I'd just take you through the process of tapping while you acknowledge this physical response. Because ultimately you often feel under threat, don't you? You feel like I'm under threat. It's a primitive feeling. It's the mid part of your brain, the amygdala, which is kicking in going, I'm not safe. I need to either run away now and hide, or I need to freeze and be still, or I need to fight. And there's another one, which is called flop, which is just to be exhausted and go, I give up. But so once we've done that, then I'd be asking you, so what other evidence have you got of feeling that people are better than you? So it is like you're giving your power away, isn't it? It's like you're thinking they know so much more. They're going to be more successful. They never look nervous. It's like they've got this thing, but actually in reality, a part of you knows they're just like you. Maybe they look more confident. Maybe they are more confident, but I would be wanting to ask you, who does this remind you of? Who does this person remind you of? And, it most likely will remind you that kind of energy of that person, maybe a teacher, somebody from university, even a relationship, family member, friend. There will be, does this relate at all?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So that's where I would want to go more deeply into, where did this begin? And you might say, oh, actually, now you're talking about it, and now I've done a bit of tapping, it's really strange, but this memory's come up where I felt totally powerless and like, they're so good. And for me, it was my sisters, in particularly one of my sisters, always comparing myself. She was cool as a cucumber all the time. And I was like, I'll never be able to live up to her standard. And I've done lots of work on that. And now I'm like, it's totally fine. I'm different to her. And I do things my way, and I don't always do them perfectly. So I hope that answers your question. It's like this journey again. So therefore, I would maybe only need to go to 2 or 3 of those places, say for you, and you start to really realize, either I think I might leave this job because it doesn't feel it's healthy for me. I need to create some stronger boundaries. And this is basically bullying. For example, it's the extreme. Or you have, once you've done the work and the tapping, you've come to the resolution, you've realized, actually, I have compassion for them. They're actually really stressed out, and or they're putting so much pressure on themselves to operate at this level. I don't want to be like that. I just want to be comfortable being me. So you get the
Yeah.
perception shift, you get the cognitive shift, the insight. Because ultimately, when you tap, you get clearer. You're like, I know what to do in a situation now. I know what's
Yeah.
best for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, and it definitely resonates. And it's like, having the right tools to do the work, and then making that assessment on, do I stay in this or do I go? And that's something, in early on in my career, when I would experience this quite a bit, and I didn't really have a lot of the tools to
Yeah.
work, especially like in my early 20s. I wasn't into all this stuff as much. So I, would really react emotionally or just leave, or, all of those different things. So I think it's helpful now to have, okay, well, let's work on this, try the tool, and then you can assess.
Exactly. And I'll just add something quickly to that, Katherine. So with situations like that, we can do the deeper work and the inner journey, and to go on this discovery of where did all this come from, and letting it go and realizing it's okay, I'm all right. We're all operating, we're all connected, we're all operating at different levels, and it's opportunities. These things that are challenges, it's a cliche, isn't it? But they're opportunities to evolve and grow and feel more at peace. But the tapping also, for example, going back to you and maybe that situation, or situations at work where you feel you're giving yourself too much, there's too much pressure for you to perform at a higher level when actually you're doing good enough. If you know you're going into a situation and you begin to feel that little voice, or that body response, which might be sweaty hands, racing heart, suddenly feeling not focused, then you can just do what we call the quick tap. And literally that's resourcing yourself super quick, and going to the toilet, for example, where you've got privacy, and you just tap the top of the head while you feel what you feel. And you literally say a statement out loud or in your mind about how you feel. So it will be something like, here it is again. I'm feeling really inadequate, this racing heart, this inner voice, I'm feeling unworthy again, this racing heart. And you just say a few statements as you tap around, and a few breaths in and out. You've only got a few minutes, then you introduce some nice positive reframing, because you've not got much time. And then, I choose to know I'm good enough. I choose to feel peace in my body. I choose to feel safe to be here now. They're just the same as me, just some nice little short statements. So that's the sort of like ongoing work you can do with tapping at any time, to just, also things like when you get a shock, just quickly just tap.
Yeah,
Many
that's
ways.
great. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too. If there, once you do a session with yourself or a practitioner, are there things like that you can do at home? So it sounds like there is, which is great.
Yes, I often give my clients a recording, not of the whole session, because often, the whole session, I'm hoping to help them feel more complete on something, and come to a sense of lightness and peace and letting go. But I do record 5 to 10 minutes of a short tap that they can do at home, just to support the work, because long-standing beliefs like I'm not good enough need a bit more work, and I like to empower my clients to do the work at home. I've also got my little I've got a YouTube channel, so I've got short videos that I supplement the themes that people have in their life. I'm not good enough, I can't do it, I'm stuck, I'm trapped. Did all that through COVID. So yeah, there's lots of resources that people can use. It doesn't have to be 1 hour tapping with a practitioner. I do recommend that for deeper work, though, not to ever work on your own on trauma.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I know that there's I saw on your website and elsewhere that there's now scientific research on the effectiveness of EFT, the EFT tapping, which is amazing. Can you share some of the research that's been done and the results?
Absolutely. So I suppose for us in Australia, one of the most wonderful things that's happened is there's a doctor called Dr. Peter Stapleton, who's based on the Gold Coast. She's a clinical health psychologist, and she did these incredible studies started to do them in, I think around 2010 or perhaps earlier, but there's one particular study that was done in 2012, and it was published in the Journal of Mental Health Disorders in the US. And basically what she was doing was she was recording before an EFT session the saliva in people's mouth to see levels of cortisol, reflecting anxiety. And then post an EFT session of approximately 50 minutes of tapping, again, noticing the cortisol levels where they are. So with the EFT tapping group, the reduction in the cortisol level was 43% versus people who didn't have tapping but had talk therapy and rest periods. The reduction in cortisol, I think, was about 19%. So very significant results, clinical trials that she did in the hospital setting. I believe she's also done some MRI brain scans as well. She's done a lot of work with people with weight issues, and she's been a pioneer for us in Australia to really say this is the scientific evidence that tapping for a short period, when you think about some people have been in therapy for years, and it's not to criticize talk therapy, but now we have these progressive tools that literally start tapping into parts of our brain that are stuck in some kind of fight, flight, or freeze, because it's sending a soothing message to the amygdala when we tap. So therefore, it is going to naturally reduce that response of cortisol that goes up to make you fight or run away. So that was one study that was done. There's so many that I'll send some links to you. You can add to the podcast if you like. But another one just that stands out is in America, they did a trial with students who were having anxiety around exams. So they formulated a particular survey which captured how much anxiety before the exam and after, and then they did 2 trials once again. There was a test which was just, it's called the progressive muscle relaxation test. And that's kind of meditative processes and breathing exercises versus doing EFT tapping. And once again, the group who did the EFT tapping, the results were significantly high as far as the stress reduction came down, and the performance of the exams were much better post tapping. So that was a really interesting study as well, because so many people get anxious before exams. You think about it, we get anxious throughout our day over so many things. Public speaking is another one. So that was another really, really good analysis of capturing the levels of anxiety that can be really acute before you go into something. Even like an interview like this, you can have a bit of nerves before you, and I did. It's a normal response, because you're suddenly like, this is it, you're showing up. It's natural, but it's not. So there's that sort of like, okay. So I just thought that was a really great study, but there is so many. And as I said, I'll send some links to you, because you've probably also heard of the World Tapping Solution. The World Tapping Summit, and that's the tapping solution. Have you heard of Nick Ortner and Jessica Ortner? They're brother and sister. So it's becoming so recognized. EFT is a really amazing stress reduction technique, and now we're getting so much scientific based evidence and case studies to actually, be able to say, yes, this is recognized. This is scientific proof that we are literally changing neural pathways and reducing our cortisol levels when we tap. So it's really amazing. This is all coming out in the last few years, and so it's just going to keep progressing and then it'll be recognized.
Yeah, I love that. I love that there's scientific research. I mean, I am a true believer in all of this, all these different modalities, but I think, for some people that are a little bit hesitant, they really need that research to prove, this is actually, this is actually doing something really profound. And I believe in talk therapy as well, but I think that like with these techniques like EFT tapping, it really gets to the core of what is
Yes.
going on. And that's something that, you know, I haven't had as much experience with talk therapy versus some of the other modalities. And that's what really attracted to me, is just getting to that core of where did this come from
Yes,
and how can I remove it? And
exactly.
then there's
Exactly. And
freedom.
that's what's so magical about it. It's and that's why I like it, because I'm quite a practical girl and I like to be really thorough. So I'm constantly analyzing, testing, asking questions and just seeing if we're on the right place. And ultimately you are getting to the roots of these dis-eases, you know. But just to add to that briefly before you move on with me, it's really evident to me now that it's becoming so popular. Is I work a lot now with integrative GPs, so they refer a lot of people to me who have got cancers and chronic fatigue and all those quite complicated disease processes, because they know the power of EFT now. So that's doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists. And they're also coming on my workshops because I teach accredited tapping, and they're using it in their practice. So it's like fantastic. Ultimate goal will be to also get it in hospitals and schools. It's starting to now, which is good. So there is a
Oh,
lot of
that's amazing.
evidence now that it's not just one of those sort of things that people pass off as, oh, one of those techniques again, you know, because there's a lot of things out there that people spend thousands of dollars on that maybe don't work so well.
Yeah, I think that's so great that it's in hospitals, and GPs are working with these types of practices as well, and I'm seeing that too. I think it started with acupuncture, but also I'm seeing lots of energy healing as well, and it's just so great because it can be very complementary. It doesn't have to be like this versus that. We can all the modalities can work together.
Yeah. Very important, isn't it? It's always holistic, and remembering always that tapping's just the tool. It's about the person delivering it. It's about how you use it in complementing everything else you're doing in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting into, I know that we touched on the trauma piece a little bit already. I know when I first started hearing trauma come up more and more in the holistic health space, I would always associate it with something really serious that happened that you would know, like, you know, some form of abuse or something along those lines. But as I've learned more about it, it actually can also be quite subtle. Like maybe when you were a baby, your mom wasn't that emotionally available, or your dad, or another caregiver. So I'm wondering, with trauma, if you can talk about what you see in terms of where and how it's held in the body, like what are the common places that it shows up, and what are some of the things that you see, and how you define trauma. I know there was a lot in that question.
That's okay. I mean, the sort of official definition of trauma or post-traumatic stress is when something happens and you feel you don't have the resources to deal with it. So you're often alone and you're not getting the support you need, and it's a sudden thing that can happen. So that's sort of the simple definition of something traumatic. You know, it suddenly comes out of nowhere, you're on your own, or people are with you, but they're not meeting your needs. And so, like you said, it can be something quite simple. I'd like to give you a funny, well, it was a little experience I had 2 nights ago. To give some framework of this, I was actually on a call. I'd been doing a course, an online course, and this call was at night, and there was about 20 people on the call. And you can see everybody's faces when you're on a big call on Zoom. And I asked this question about something, and the lady who was running the course, I could tell that either she didn't know the answer, so she didn't know, she didn't understand the question or didn't know the answer, and started off by kind of, it felt like laughing at me. And that's what it felt like at the time, what I saw was, and I immediately went into, I haven't asked the question properly. And my little child was like, at school again, it's like, you've not made yourself clear. And then I felt put down because she sort of was smirking. I felt like she was laughing at me. And then later she was saying something else. And it was in front of all these people on the Zoom call. But the funny thing is, because I know this work, I could feel myself triggered. I could feel myself like, I still need to have my voice. I still need to ask the question, but I could feel it all. And then after the call, I was quite rattled. I was kind of a bit shook up, and I felt a little bit traumatized and a little bit ashamed with all these people because it was quite intense.
Yeah.
So I just thought, right, this is great. I'm going to do some tapping. And because I was on my own, I didn't have anybody there to help me. It was even though it's not a big trauma, I felt like I was going into a bit of the fight, flight, or freeze. I kind of wanted to run away, but I knew I
Mhm.
really wanted to go for it. So I just did some tapping. I looked at myself in the mirror and I tapped and tapped, and just on this fear of not being good enough, this fear of not being articulate. It took me 5-10 minutes. And so I
Mhm.
came out of that sort of, and there was a bit of shock as well about how I didn't feel like she held a safe place. So there
Mhm.
was all of that, and it was only 10 minutes of tapping. So that was doing tapping on something fairly immediate. But yes, there's lots of examples, aren't there, of when you can get a sort of a small shock, like, and your body goes into this response, which is what we've talked about, the fight, freeze, or flop. And the tapping, what we're doing with that is, as I said, we are tapping on these meridian points, which are sending this soothing message to resolve often the shock at first, because that, when you gave me an example of, actually, it might be different with the example you gave about a child living in an environment where the mother's not present.
Mhm.
It still can be perceived as a bit traumatic because they're suddenly not resourced and they're really not having their needs met.
Mhm.
So they're sort of weakened in a weakened environment, and open to more things happening where they feel like, oh, I can't cope, and the body starts to freeze, or it gets exhausted with not having the support it needs and it flops, and then that can go on to the disease process, for example, chronic fatigue.
Mhm.
So many different ways to obviously approach that. Again, you can do the immediate tapping for the initial sort of, you've seen something, you've seen an accident, you've seen a cat on the road or something, you can do some immediate tapping for the shock, and then all the emotions that can come after that, the sadness, the frustration that nobody did anything, and then the acceptance part, which is, it's very sad, but it's happened and I'm not helpless, I couldn't do anything, because we're always looking at
Mhm.
the associated beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and that's something that I've also been, just with the emotions that I have been, you know, talking about more with people in our community, and also experiencing it myself, is just letting the emotions happen and just letting it out. So even if, it sounds like even with EFT tapping, if something is coming out, it's acknowledging, okay, this is an emotion that's happening, and you're also doing something about it. So it kind of marries those two things together, which I like.
Yes, it's acknowledgement. I think the key thing with tapping for anything, including trauma, is you're actually safely acknowledging what's happened. If there's
Yeah.
something highly traumatic, there's a process I take people through, and it's highly traumatic. I was explaining to help them feel safe using tearless trauma, but putting that aside, it's an amazing tool to really say, I'm in shock when I remember that now. And so we feel the shock, don't we? But we release it. So we're literally letting it
Mhm.
out the cells, because trauma, you will answer this part of the next question, is held, for me, it gets held in the cells immediately. It's like, boom, it's
Mhm.
there. So if
Yeah.
we can get there straight away with all the emotions associated with something that happens suddenly, a traumatic incident, the shock, the distress, the fear, the grief, the sadness, the frustration, the anger, the resentment, all those layers, we want to resolve that so it doesn't kick off a dis-ease process, because dis-ease is really when you're not at ease with a situation, i.e., you're
Mhm.
not at ease with something that's happened that's been traumatic.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And are there signs that someone has trauma that stuck in their body that you notice immediately when somebody walks in, or maybe they can
Yeah.
notice it themselves?
Yeah. So I suppose there's something that's very obvious to the audience, is when when somebody does receive a shock, or they're relaying the shock to me, the body can, things, if it's that immediate recollection of a shock, or you're in the trauma, the body can shake, of course, 'cause it's trying to discharge. The shaking is a way to try and discharge from the fight, flight, or freeze. But there's obviously racing heart and those sweating and just feeling very uncomfortable. And that's where we, that's what can happen when I take somebody through trauma, is they can experience the physical of the discharge. But looking at patterns of where we hold trauma in the body, as I said, the first place really is the cells. So I see EFT as really releasing that safely from the cells. But some common things that, I'd say one of the most common places that people hold trauma is actually in the digestive system. Because you think about, you're not able to digest something, and it affects so many of your organs, even your mouth, your throat, can often be a place where people hold trauma, so they're not able to speak, or they keep getting sore throats, infections. We kind of start at the head as well with anxiety and thoughts, but as we travel around, I'd say one of the most common things is people holding it in their gut and having digestive issues, but it's also joints like shoulders, so common when people come and they're saying there's constant pain in the body, and I know there's unresolved trauma. The body's responding, it's trying to protect itself, it's trying to help itself, but typically shoulders is all the burden, it's that burden of life, unresolved conflicts. So I don't do a survey, but with that I can do a bit of a scan of my clients, and I'd say they're fairly common. They're quite up there, the digestive issues, the autoimmune conditions, again, unresolved trauma. Any kind of unresolved conflict will set off the body's what we call disease process, which actually is the healing process. It's not a disease, really. It's just the body wanting to heal. So cancer is a indicator the body wants to heal. The tumor is actually, it's trying to heal. So we kind of change the paradigm of disease, really. I hope this is making sense. Kind of gone off on a bit of a tangent, but it's really fascinating to me.
It is. No, it is. Yeah.
Having worked with lots of cancer patients as well, and the gut and abdominal issues and cancers, we look at what's going on, and it's amazing when we work with all the trauma that things start working and they get well with other supplementary processes.
That's incredible, because I just completely believe in that the mind and body are so connected. Even the throat example, I remember a period of time when I would have a lot of I kept getting tonsillitis over and over again, and it was during a period where I was feeling very triggered at work a little bit. I wasn't speaking my mind. I wasn't in my power, and I kept getting tonsillitis. So I feel like it's just so interesting how connected the mind and body can be. And I think for cancer patients in particular, that's incredible that there's now this tool that they can leverage as part of their treatment, and it's really making giving them profound results.
Well, it is, isn't it? Because if you think about it as a basic level, again, any kind of alternative therapies, we're removing the stress element that the body's under. And of course, when we've got less stress and less chemicals in our body, like high levels of cortisol, and we're in a loving environment, hopefully in our homes and with our friendships, the body knows what to do. The reality is we all probably die with cancers and tumors in our body, but some of it doesn't progress because there's peace, there's enough peace in the body, there's enough calm and joy and those innate qualities that we're born to have. So I see EFT and Matrix is that, so empowering, because my questions with my clients is, what is it you're not at peace with? What is it you're still struggling? What do you feel when you reflect on it you're not at ease with? And with people with cancer and chronic disease, the question I ask first is, how do you feel about the fact you have this? Well, nobody's asked me that. I'm really angry. I'm really frustrated. I'm fearful. And then also the really key thing with, again, trauma and disease is the diagnosis. When people get the diagnosis, it's another shock. So if we don't resolve that shock response, which kicks off the chemical imbalance, and then the body's all acidic and it creates this disease, then the body's not in a conducive environment to go, I know what to do. because we all have the ability to have cancer. We're going to turn those genes off now because I'm safe in my body. My body feels safer. I'm safe in the world. I feel good enough. I mean, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? But we didn't know this years ago.
Yeah, it's not something that's taught, that's for sure. It's only been in the past several years for me, but yeah, I feel like with kids, like, you know, it would be so impactful to teach them this stuff early, so that way they don't have to spend the rest of their adult life trying to get back to self-acceptance and feeling good enough and all of those feelings. Is there, I know we're getting close to time, so it's just been such a great conversation. So much,
isn't it? We can talk all day.
Yeah. I'm curious in what a typical day looks like for you in managing your mental and physical health, and how you integrate tapping into that.
Yeah, well, I gave you a little example, didn't I, of a couple of nights ago, when I was like, right, I need to tap, and I'm at the place where I know that any challenge is like, okay, this is good, another level of not feeling good enough. And but actually on a day-to-day level, I really have learned to really be aware of my energy level and what I'm capable of giving, because in this kind of work, as you know, you're giving. So, and I'm holding a space for sometimes really quite complicated scenarios and conversations. So I typically only ever see 4 clients maximum a day. And I plan. It's been a difficult thing in my youth to plan. I was very Aquarian. I was like, oh, yeah. But now I know, running a business for 14 years, the importance of planning. So I make sure I plan. I make sure I do my own work on myself, but I also work with a coach. I have to be supervised because I'm a trainer and a practitioner. So I'm always making sure I'm clearing. So I'm not, if I get triggered in a session with somebody, I know I need to go and work on that. So I'm making sure that I keep myself as present as I can with my clients. I obviously make sure I have good holidays. And one of the really important things for me is having a laugh and not taking everything so seriously. You know, sometimes in this field, we can get really deep and meaningful all the time. It's like, oh, that must mean that, and rheumatoid arthritis means this and that. And it's like, maybe, but you know, let's be open and make it a little lighter. So just other little things I do is, you know, I use aromatherapy. I love Donna Eden. I don't know if you know Donna Eden, but she's a beautiful lady in America who does energy techniques, physical energy. So, you know, really nice physical exercises to uncross, I suppose. Because our meridians can get crossed over when we get stressed. For example, if you're carrying a bag on your shoulder all the time, all day long, it's cutting off one of the meridian flows. So you can feel scrambled on your head and you don't feel focused. So there's lovely energy techniques that she teaches. So I do those in between sessions, and even just at home in the morning. Before this today, I went in the garden, I was grounding on the grass, you know.
Yeah, I love all of that. And I think it's so important to create space. And there was something else that you said that really resonated and just left me, but I'm sure it'll come back. But yeah, I think I even noticed with myself, I have ebbs and flows. Like some days I wake up and I'm super excited and happy, and then other days I'm not. So it's like kind of structuring my day around those emotions, that way I can bring the best energy. So yeah.
And it's true, isn't it, Katherine? We're not, and it's me being mindful, I'm sure you're the same, as knowing that that voice will come in, especially when you're in the world like you are on podcasts and videos, and I have a YouTube channel. I'm putting myself out there a lot, so I'm really working with that trigger that can come up of, am I enough? Am I doing this okay? Is it perfect? So it's just, it never stops, does it? It's an ongoing journey, but you look at it as a discovery journey rather than, oh, more to do. It's kind of a nice way to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about it, you know, not taking everything so seriously, because I do that. I'm curious about human behavior so much that I can just question myself all the time. I'm like, well, I just had this emotion. Why is this coming up? What's going on? What does this mean? There must be something with childhood, and it can just get really exhausting over time. So I have to learn to just shut that off at times when it's not helpful anymore. Well, I want to be mindful of time. So there's one question that we ask, a closing question that we ask all of our guests. The podcast is called This Life Explains It All. So the question that we ask is, what life experience has been your greatest teacher?
That was an interesting question, yes. And I really sat with that, and I really feel that my move to Australia from the UK has probably been one of the biggest teachers, but there's another one that falls in line with that as far as importance, which even comes before that actually, which is my rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis when I was 16 completely changed the course of my life. So I don't have that anymore, and it was the beginning of me understanding the mind-body connection. So that was really the biggest, huge learning curve that's really changed the course of my life, you know, and I'm so grateful for it because I understand autoimmune, I understand the emotions and how stress can cause that response. So that, and moving to Australia and dealing with, and you're, I think, from the US, is that right?
Yes. Yeah, from the
so
US.
You can probably relate with COVID now. We've got other layers of travel. Will we travel? You know, so there's this amazing opportunity again that I've had to deal with, living away from my family and working through myself, issues that come up around that. So they're two of the probably the most profound ones that I've now see as real gifts.
Yes, I love that. And I love being able to look back to at those experiences. And that's why we ask this question, because it's inspirational when, you know, if someone is going through something like that right now, you know, don't worry, it'll all make sense. So I always remind myself of that too.
I like what you just said about it'll make sense. And it's the senses, isn't it? It is the senses. It's like, you know, there's a purpose behind all of this that you think is suffering. There's something much more magnificent to receive from it.
Absolutely. And where can people find you? Where's the best place to go if they want to work with you? I know you do one-on-one sessions because I'm going to see you, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, where's the best place for them to go?
I think, you know, obviously I've got information on my website, which you may be able to put a link. Sorry, my dog is going to be quiet in a second.
That's okay.
I work in online globally with people via Zoom or any other platform. I work in person in my beautiful cabin in the garden, which you'll see, in Freshwater near Manly. I also offer monthly tapping group in my home. So that's really nice for local people who want to come together and just have a little bit of stress reduction. And we have meditation, a cup of tea, and there's men and women, and it's really lovely. So, and then of course I teach my EFT workshops. So there's one coming up in July and August. So there's a foundation workshop to learn all the basics so you can use it every day. And then there's a more advanced one, which is in August. They're the main sort of places to come to. I've got my YouTube channel, lots of little videos there. But yeah, so lots of resources, really.
Amazing. Well, we'll link all of that in the show notes so people can check you out. It has been such a pleasure talking to you today. I learned so much, and I'm excited to dig into all of this even more.
Yes, thank you so much for asking me. It's been really nice to talk to you and share it with you, and I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Yes, so for sure. I'll just stop this recording.